Hi everybody, I'm Stefan for Tutspus, and in today's tutorial we are going to create a cool looking 3D animation for the Valentine's Day using Cinema 4D, After Effects and just a bit of Illustrator. So let's get started. The first step we are going to do is in Illustrator, preparing the outline for the 3D heart. So let's select the outline and just hit Ctrl C to copy the shape and Ctrl F to paste it right in front of the previous shape. And let's hold down Alt and Shift and just scale it down just a touch. And using the arrow keys, move the shape to the bottom side a bit. And once you're ready, let's go to File, Save As, and let's save the shape and make sure that you save under version 8. So we are able to open this shape into Cinema 4D. And since I did this step already, let's jump into Cinema 4D. And as you can see, I have a 3D heart object here. I was able to find online for free, but you can create one by yourself. It's pretty easy. You can take the 3D heart outline and just extrude it and apply a bit of rounding on the edges to create this smooth heart shape. Let's select this shape and just scale it down so it's very tiny. We want a small hearts for this one. And this is the outline we just did in Illustrator. And let's scale this up quite a lot and set this to -90 degrees. And the next step is to drop down a 4 object into the scene and just double click to create a material for the 4, and let's name the material 4 and go to the color tab and under texture apply gradient. Click on the gradient and change the type of the gradient to circular, and for the middle color we are going to use a very bright pink color around here and click OK. And for the sides we are going to use a bit darker color, maybe something around here. Let's click OK and close the material, and let's drag and drop the material onto the 4 object. And as you can see, we have some tiles here of the material, and let's click on the material and make sure that under projection it is set to frontal, and as you can see that fixes the problem. Now let's go to the render settings by hitting Ctrl B. Let's go to the output and set the size to 1280 by 720, and let's go to the anti-aliasing tab and just set it to best. We are going to use the default settings here and go to Effect, Ambient Occlusion, and just apply Ambient Occlusion for the project. And since we are doing a animation, we want to avoid some flickering and noise in the Ambient Occlusion, and that's why we need to increase the samples. So let's set the maximum samples to 96 and let's set the minimum samples to 32, and let's lower the accuracy to 40%. With that we are ready with setting the main settings for the render settings on this project. Now let's close the render settings dialog and select the heart outline and just hold down Alt and apply extrude. And if you notice, there are some changes here. All the objects are exactly the same and work the same way. And since I'm using Cinema 4D version 15, you can see that they removed the NURBS word from all of the objects here. So this is subdivision surface and this is extrude, not extrude NURBS. So just a minor change, nothing to worry about. And let's select the extrude object and go to the object and let's set this to -350. And the next step is to create emitter. So let's go to simulate particles and drop down an emitter, and let's go to the coordinates for the emitter and set it to 600 on the y-axis, and let's rotate it like negative 90 degrees, and take the heart and make it a child of the emitter. And now let's create a camera, and let's turn on the camera and go to the coordinates and reset everything so we can set the camera. Let's go to the y-axis for the position and set it to 500, and let's rotate it to negative 90 degrees so we look downwards like so. And let's set the focal length of the camera to 15 millimeters. Maybe move it on the z-axis like 8. And this is it. This is our camera. And since we are not going to move it anymore, let's go to Cinema 4D tags and let's apply a protection tag. So this walks all the camera settings for the coordinates, and we can't move this by accident, which is very helpful. Now for the hearts, we need to apply some dynamics tags here. So let's select the heart and just right click and go to simulation tags and apply rigid body. Let's take the 4 and drag it to the bottom, and let's rename the extrude to heart outline. Select the 4 and right click again, go to simulation tags and let's apply collider body, and let's make some room here. Select the collider body tag, and under collision we have bounce and friction, and we want to set the bounce to 10 and set the friction to 60%. We are doing this because we don't want our hearts to bounce too much and to slide on the floor. We want them to just fall, bounce a bit and stay in place. So that's why we decrease the bounce and increase the friction. And the same thing for the hard particle. Let's set the bounce to 10 and increase the friction to 60%. Let's select the dynamics rigid body tag from the hard particle and just hold down Ctrl and drag it to the hard outline. And under shape we need to change this to static mesh, and if we try to simulate the particles you don't see anything right now. That's because we need to tweak some of the settings of the emitter here. And let's take the emitter and let's click on the emitter tab and change the size on the X and Y to 25. Go to the particle and set the number of particles to 180 in the editor and the renderer. The start emission starts at frame 0 and the stop emission is at frame 120. The lifetime of the particles is 600 frames, which is okay. We need to set the rotation to 45 degrees just to have some randomness here. And if we click show objects, we're going to see the actual 3D hearts. Let's check the rest of the settings. Everything looks good. So if we go to the first frame and if we play back, you can see how it looks like so far. And it's pretty slow because we have a lot of particles and rigid body simulations going on. So we're going to pause the video here, and one thing I notice is that we need to increase the extrusion of the object to something like negative 700, and we need to select this and right click, go to Cinema 4D tags and apply compositing, and we want to uncheck scene by camera. So if we go to our camera view and do a render, we don't see the heart object here, but as you can see, we see the outline down here, and I guess this is because the ambient occlusion, because we have seen by ambient occlusion, and this shape and the four touch each other. So if we select the compositing tag and uncheck seen by ambient occlusion, and if we do a render, you can see that this fixes the problem. And now let's create another material, and let's call it heart, and for the color we're going to use a red color, maybe make it a bit dark, and enable the reflection channel for the red color, set the brightness to 50%, go to the texture and apply Fresnel, set the mix strength to 60%, and let's close this, and apply this material to our heart particle. The next step we are going to do is to create a sphere object, and I'm going to explain why we create this object. Let's disable the extrude object for now, because we have the emitter behind the camera and the particles fall down and they are going to go and some move through the camera, and we don't want that. So we create a sphere object. Let's take the sphere object and let's set the radius to 10 and move it up like 450 on the y-axis, and let's go to the beginning of the timeline to remove the particles, and let's set this sphere right here where the lens of the camera is, and let's see, this looks good, and maybe we can reduce the segments of the sphere, and let's apply a collider body tag to the sphere. So basically the hearts will hit the sphere and go sideways, and this way the camera is always to have clearer view of what is going on below. So that's pretty important, and let's disable this in the editor here, and if we play back the animation you can notice it is very slow right now, and you can see that none of the particles go through the lens of the camera and block the entire view. So this is the reason we did this sphere. And a faster way to preview the particles is to go to the render settings and change the renderer from standard to hardware, and let's go to the standard just for a second, and let's set this to 600 frames. Go to the render settings now and set this to all frames, and if we go to the hardware renderer, and we can disable the save, and if we hit Shift R and click yes, you can see that it renders pretty quickly, and you can create a quick preview just to monitor the animation and the movement of the objects, and once you are happy with the animation you can proceed forward and do the final rendering. So I'm going to pause the video right now to wait for the preview render and come back when it's ready. So here we are again. I just noticed that I forgot to enable the heart outline extrude object, so that was the reason I stopped the preview and set it to render again, and here is the final outcome. This is the animation and I'm pretty happy with the look of it, so let's close this and just make sure that if we do a render, let's go to the render settings and set the renderer to the standard, and let's make sure we don't see the sphere. So let's right click and apply a compositing tag and click scene by camera, and we don't see the sphere and we don't see the heart outline as well, which is exactly what we want. And one final thing I'm going to do is to create a plane. So let's just create a simple plane object and move it here and set this to 250 by 250, and we need only one segment. Let's double click to create a material, and let's enable the luminance channel, disable the color and the specular, and just apply the material here. And if we do a render now, we can see some nice reflections on the hearts, which is exactly what we are going for. And now let's go to the render settings and just set the format to PNG. For the export, click save, set your output folder, and just make sure to export a compositing project file for After Effects, just because of the 3D camera, because we want some accurate 3D camera in the After Effects project, because we are going to create some 3D type and particles. And that's it, we are ready. Once you set the output folder, you can render this out, and since I already did this, I'm going to jump in After Effects and start compositing the final animation. Here we are in After Effects, and as you can see, we have the 3D render and the camera. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is to apply some effects on the 3D render sequence. So let's type first RSMB for the Real Smart Motion Blur, and I'm going to decrease the motion sensitivity just a bit to add a nice motion blur, which would be very slow to render from Cinema 4D. And after that, let's go to Effect, Stylize, and let's apply Glow, and let's set the glow threshold to 98%, and let's increase the glow radius like so. After that, let's create a new solid and let's call it Particles Small, and let's go to Effect, Trap Code, and apply Particular, and let's open the emitter and let's set the emitter type to box. Let's set the number of particles to 250, and let's set the direction from uniform to directional, and let's set the Y rotation to 180 so the particles come towards us, and let's increase the size of the box emitter to 1500 by 1500 on the X and Y, and 250 on the Z, and the rest of the settings are going to stay as they are by default. And let's set the pre-run to 100, and we do that because if we set this to 0, we don't have any particles emitted at this point, and if we set this to 100, we already emit some particles. Let's change the random seed just a bit and open the particle tab, and let's set the life of the particles to 8 seconds. Remove the sphere feather to 0, so we have some nice sharp particles. And let's set the size to 0.2 for the particles, or 0.4, just so you can see it on the screen recording. And let's set the size random to 100 and open the size over wife and set it to this preset here. Maybe change the color of the particles to a very bright pink color, something like that. And since we are ready with the particles, we need to create a copy of the layer. So let's select the layer and hit Ctrl D to duplicate it, and let's rename this to particles medium. Before we proceed forward, I forgot to apply some motion blur here, and also make sure to enable the motion blur for the sequence, and go to Effect, Stylize, and apply Glow for the first layer with the particles, and just duplicate the glow and set the second copy to 20% for the glow radius, and just copy the glow effects and paste them on the particles medium layer. The first thing we need to do here is to reduce the particles per second to 35. We want to change the random seed, and also to change the size of the particles. Let's set the size to 1, and basically keep all the rest of the settings the same. And let's create a copy. Let's duplicate the layer and let's rename this one to particles big, and enable the motion blur for all the layers, and change the blending mode for the particle layers to add. And for this layer, let's reduce the number of particles to 20, and let's change the random seed again, and let's increase the size of the particles to 3. Basically that's it for the particle layers. As you can see, we have a lot of particles right now. And the next step is to create an adjustment layer. So let's go to Layer, New, and apply Adjustment Layer. And let's rename this layer to Blur, and let's click OK, and go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, and let's apply Camera Lens Blur. And if we set this to 10, you can see that it applies a pretty nice blur. You can change the shape of the blur to square. You can see how it looks like, and pentagon, or some other settings that you create almost a perfect circle. And I'm going to go with this shape and go to the 8-second mark, and set a keyframe for the blur radius and set it to 0, and move like 2 seconds forward to 10-second mark, and set this to 15, and we are going to click the repeat edge pixels. And what we need to do is to duplicate the small and the medium particle layers. So let's duplicate the layers and put them on top of the blur, and make sure to change the random seed for each layer, just to create the illusion of depth. And when we blur the particles in the background, we have some particles left in the foreground. And the next step is to create the type layer. So let's select the type tool and let's increase the size for the type. And obviously this is not the font we are going to use, so let's change the font to Vivaldi, and let's set this to 800, and let's unsole the type layer, maybe decrease the size of the text to 80%, and let's use the arrow keys to center the text, maybe move it to the bottom, and play with the spacing. Let's set this one to 75, and let's change the color to a pink, maybe a bit brighter, like that. And let's go to effect, and let's see perspective, and apply bevel alpha, and set the edge thickness to 1, and set the light intensity to 0.7, and after that go to effect and perspective again, apply drop shadow, and set the opacity to 65%, and set the distance to 1, and maybe change the color to darker pink color to create this sort of shadow. And let's apply some animation to the text. Let's enable per character 3D, and let's animate the position, and let's animate the opacity and the blur of the text. Let's set the blur to 30, let's set the opacity to 0, and let's open the range selector and open the advanced, and set the shape to ramp up, and randomize order, turn it on, and we are going to have some smooth animation that way. And go to the 7 seconds mark around here, and set a keyframe for the offset, and go to the 10-second mark right here, and let's animate in the text, and this is the animation we are going for. Let's apply effect blur and sharpen fast blur to this layer, and let's set this to vertical and set it to 25%, and let's duplicate the blur and set it to horizontal and set this to 100%, and set the blending mode of the layer to add, and let's duplicate the layer. We need to delete the fast blur, and let's make sure that we set the opacity of the first layer to 70% and the opacity of the second layer to 75%. And also let's go to effect blur and sharpen and apply CC radial blur, and set this to fading zoom, for example, and let's increase this to like 60, and play with the position, and maybe 75 to create sort of a nice white race effect. And let's animate the position, go to the 8-second mark and set a keyframe, and go to the end of the timeline and just animate the position of the blur. And let's duplicate the layer and just remove the radial blur to create the final text, and change the blending mode to normal and set it to 100%. So this is the animation we are going for the text. Let's collapse all the layers and let's create another adjustment layer and select the mask ellipse tool and double click to create a mask. And let's go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, and apply Fast Blur. Set it to 100%. Repeat edge pixels, and let's subtract the mask and set the feather to 500 pixels. Just create a nice soft blur around the edges. You can see how it looks like. Maybe we can reduce this to 75. And now we need to apply some nice lens flare effects. So let's create a new layer and let's call it OF for optical flares. And go to Effect, Video Copilot, and apply optical flares. Go to Options and I'm going to use one of the presets here, which is called FDA, and let's click OK. Let's set the lens flare here, change the blending mode to Add, and let's go to the 7 seconds and 14 frames mark and set the brightness to 100. And let's hit U to review the keyframe. Go to the 10-second mark and set the keyframe at 100% for the brightness as well, and go in the middle between the two keyframes and set the brightness to 250. And now let's duplicate the layer and let's call this one OF Lens Effects, and hit U to review the keyframes. Set this one to 100, go to the first frame, set this one to 40, and go to the final frame and set this one to 40 as well. Open the options and let's clear all. Click on the global parameters here, and we are going to use a lens texture, which is this one, which is called dirty, and set the illumination radius to 500. Click OK. Basically we create sort of a nice lens effects here, and let's create a new adjustment layer and let's call this one CC for color correction, and go to Effect, Color Correction, and apply curves. Just give the final result a bit of contrast. Go to the blue channel for the curves and just increase just a bit the blue in the shadows and try to make it normal for the rest of the tones. And let's apply sharpen. So let's go to blur and sharpen and apply sharpen, and let's set this to 15. And let's go to Effect, Noise and Grain, and apply some noise, and uncheck color noise and set this to 5%. And that's it. At the end you can create a new adjustment layer, and let's call this one Fade Out, and let's apply blur and sharpen, camera lens blur, and Effect, Color Correction, Exposure, and go to the, let's see, 13-second mark, and let's set a keyframe for the exposure and set a keyframe for the blur radius and set it to 0, and go to the end of the timeline, set this one to 30 for the blur, and let's set the exposure to -3 or -5, let's say this to -10 until it's all black, and hit U to review the keyframes. Select the first two keyframes and let's go to keyframe assistant and easy ease to make the animation start very smoothly. And that's it. That's the tutorial. Now you are ready to export this, and you can type maybe different text here depending of what you're going for. But yeah, that's the tutorial. Hope you like it and find it useful. Once again, I'm Stefan for Tutspuss, and we'll see you next time.